The heat in the bowels of Dragonstone felt like the breath of a caged god. Maester Corin stood at the lip of the cavern forge, where molten rivers of rock glowed a baleful orange, slick as wet silk, and in that light, even his maester's chain shimmered red gold. 3 years of study in the scroll crypts of Volantis. Sleepless nights deciphering glyphs older than the doom itself. And 12 death wagers with dragonfire had led here. To the first true rebirth of He extended a trembling hand. On the anvil lay the proof, an unfinished longsword whose surface drank firelight instead of reflecting it, smoky ripples coiling along the fuller like dragons chasing their tails. The metal's music, when struck, was a thin, sweet clarion, not iron, not steel, but something half alive. Corin could have wept. Instead he whispered the last syllables of the forging charm, throat raw from a week's chant, and the blade cooled to a dark shimmer. Behind him, Prince Rhaegar's son, Aenys, scar-haired, unresting, every inch his father save the haunted eyes, exhaled. "One for each great house," he said, voice brittle with purpose. "That was our bargain." "Our bargain stands," Corin replied. "But know this. Every hammer blow binds the wielder's fate to the steel. Valyrian blades choose their masters, and the old spells have teeth." Aenys accepted the warning in silence. He touched the hiltless tang, testing the heat. A new age of steel, he'd proclaimed in council, would heal the realm's wounds. The War of 5 Kings lay 5 winters past, yet Westeros still bled from invisible cuts. Bandit lords reigning in the Riverlands, famine in the Reach, rumor of shadows in the far north. An equal blade for every great house, he argued, would check ambition, bind them in mutual dread, and prepare men for the darkness stirring beyond the wall. In the crags above the forge, 2 dragons answered each other with earth-shuddering cries. Moondancer and Stormshroud, siblings by Syrex's last clutch, circled in restless loops, uneasy at the sorcery below. Corin remembered the texts. True Valyrian steel required living fire. Not merely heat but a dragon's own flame, mingled with spells of blood, fortune, and sacrifice. He prayed the price he'd paid, his maester's oaths, a score of his years, and the life of his favorite raven, would satisfy the old gods of Valyria. In Winterfell, Lady Sansa Stark woke to raven-wrought news. A royal summons sealed with the triple-headed dragon. She read the parchment once, twice, fed it to the hearth, and stared at the embered flakes drifting up the chimney. Outside, her people repaired broken gatehouses and reforged plows. The north healed slowly, but it healed. To abandon them for King's Landing, for politics poisoned by Lannister gold and Tyrell smiles, felt folly. Yet the letter's final line chilled her blood. The king had a gift of ancient northern honor reborn in fire. Valyrian steel had not graced Stark hands since ice was parted on Tywin Lannister's orders. For Sansa's younger brother Jon, called by some Snow, by others Stark, and by ravens in the night, the Wolf King beyond the wall, that loss had always been a wound that wouldn't scab. If the crown truly promised a new blade forged of the same strange metal, could she refuse? She dispatched ravens to White Harbor and Bear Island, set Arya, quiet as Moonshadow these days, to guard Bran's weirwood meditations, and left Sir Brienne as castellan. On the 7th dawn she rode south with a close retinue, Maester Samwell Tarly, Lord Gendry Baratheon, newly wed to Lady Alice Karstark, wearing the direwolf and the stag conjoined, and 300 northern spears whose loyalty was older than fear. The road to King's Landing still bore ghosts of war. Wheel ruts frozen with black water where carts of dead once rolled, coppices sprouting ash saplings where siege towers had burned, a single flayed man nailed to a crossroads oak. Bolton punishment for deserters, never removed. Sam pointed out each grim marker, compiling knowledge for his book. Sansa listened with half an ear, more taken by the hush in the air. Snowflakes drifted, though it was only first frost. An early winter crept southward. Somewhere beyond the frozen shore, she guessed, her brother fought shadows clad in ice. A dragon-forged sword, could mean the difference between victory and endless night. In the crypt vaults beneath Casterly Rock, Tyrion Lannister cradled his wine cup as the raven's words echoed off stone. A Valyrian steel sword, promised by royal decree, for the house that once boasted Brightroar. Lost in Valyria with King Tommen II, during a mad quest for dragonsteel riches. His father had spent half a life weeping molten gold to replace that blade. All for naught. Now fate dangled a new one, as if to tease the Lannisters with what might have been. Tyrion's tall nephew, Sir Tyrek, reborn to titles after surviving the riot of King's Landing by feigning death, paced the crypt. Cersei will never stomach a Stark or a Tyrell bearing equal steel, he scoffed. She will, if Aenys Targaryen keeps his dragons roosting over the Red Keep. Tyrion drained the cup. Equality of terror is the surest peace. Our little lioness believes fear is a spice. Aenys means to make it bread and salt for all. Tyrek stopped at the tomb of King Loren the Last, who'd knelt to Aegon and survived. Do you trust the forging? He asked softly. Tyrion recalled the secrets bronze gold had pried from Volantine smiths. Fire hotter than hell, spells sung in languages men's tongues forgot, and above all dragonflame. He imagined Corran. Yes, he knew the maester's name, standing too near a dragon's maw. Eyebrows crisping, voice cracking. I trust the price, Tyrion answered. Valyrian steel drinks magic. If Corran's method is sound, each blade will bear a drop of dragonfire. And dragons, my boy, do not relinquish what is theirs without consequence. Highgarden perfumed the air with rose oil and crushed mint as Lady Margaery Tyrell, Queen Regent in all but name, supervised the packing of her fleet. Sir Loras rode again, scarred, slower but unbroken, and would sail at her side. The Reach needed this sword. It would symbolize rebirth, remind the realm that flowers could grow from battle soil if watered by courage and iron. Privately, she savored a different ambition, to wield the blade herself. No lady of the Reach had ever borne Valyrian steel. Knights and lords hoarded such honor. Margaery envisioned parrying in the practice yard, rose-gilded sunlight dancing along dark ripples, small folk cheering a warrior queen. Power won by marriage faded when husbands died. Power drawn with one's own hand from a scabbard. Ah, that endured. Her grandmother, the Queen of Thorns, cackled at the thought. A sword's a fine bauble, but remember, child, lords covet baubles. Keep one eye on the steel and the other on their daggers. They'll find no purchase, Margaery promised. Not while Loras and I stand together. Olenna sniffed. Steel keeps an edge. Brothers sometimes don't. But she kissed Margaery's brow all the same, slipped a pouch of rare golden seeds into her palm. Flowers for a grave, if you must dig one. And sent the Tyrell banners streaming north on warm reach winds that would die in the first winter gale. In Sunspear, Prince Oberyn's bastard daughters debated which of them deserved the promised blade. Obara boasted of kills in the stepstones. Nymeria spoke of justice for Elia. Tyene whispered that poison on a Valyrian edge would make even kings bleed like common crooks. Their laughter filled the Tower of the Sun under windows bright with Dornish sky. Yet Doran Martell, slow-moving and sharper than serpents, saw a storm behind the mirth. Valyrian steel in every house meant the old balance of terror would shift. Lannister gold, Baratheon storms, Stark ice, none frightened Dorne as Dragonsteel could. Once, he had dreamed of dragons returning to avenge his sister's death. Now vengeance might come gift-wrapped, courtesy of a crown that still reeked of Targaryen fire. He dispatched a sand skiff east across the narrow sea, carrying emissaries to Varys the Spider, rumored alive in hidden cells, and to the Iron Bank. Gold might cool hot blades, or, failing that, buy insurance should they ignite a wider war. At Storm's End, Queen Gendria, the name Smallfolk coined for Lord Gendry Baratheon's northern bride, overlooked the tide-beaten causeway where smiths hauled ingots of ancient iron. Gendry's arms swung a hammer even now, shaping castle tools beside common men. He yearned to see the forging craft behind Valyrian steel, to taste its mystery with furnace-roughened palms. But he had bent knee to Sansa's summons, and Storm's End would send its finest knights northward soon. If a sword could unite Baratheon stone and Stark snow in common purpose, she thought, perhaps their children might inherit a realm less brittle. Gendry's laughter rose from the yard. She smiled, and prayed the tale of Dragonsteel would not end in widow's black. Across the sunset sea, on the lonely island of Dragonstone, Maester Corran completed the 7th blade by midwinter. Each forging exacted heavier toll. His left hand curled useless from heat cramp. New blisters roofed his mouth from constant chant. The cavern rang with hammerfall and trembled under dragon roars. Prince Aenys paced like a man whose dreams outstripped his body's capacity. Shadows beneath his eyes lengthened. Corran warned him. 1 blade remained. 9 were promised. 7 kingdoms. 7 blades. Aenys rasped. The Isles and Dorne make 9 rulers, true, but the Ironborn will take the sea for their domain. They have Stormbreaker's promise, and we are the 10. He revealed a slender parchment signed by High Septon Lancel V, once the boy who ignited wildfire beneath the sepia. Now a zealot turned pontiff, he'd blessed the plan under condition the faith receive a sword for its own silent sister knights. Aenys meant to keep that promise. So 10 blades there must be, though the forging ate time like a fever. Corran bled a palm and whispered obeisance to nameless powers of earth and fire. Dragonstone's true masters perhaps listened, or perhaps not. He could only forge. The king himself occupied the Red Keep, but governance fell to his hand. Lord Davos Seaworth, risen from smuggler to statesman through honest loyalty. Davos read each raven scroll of arrival. Sansa's party reaching Maidenpool amid early snows. Margaery's ships sighted near Duskendale. Tyrion's gilded caravan crossing the Blackwater Rush. Dorne's hawks rumored above the King's Road, though unseen. And the Greyjoys, a black sail glimpsed off Crackclaw Point before sea mist swallowed it. Inside the small council chamber, tensions crackled like frost underfoot. Goldcloak's boots tracked slush across marble floors. Ravens beat frantic wings in tower cages. Tales from the wall worsened. The dead moved again, great white shadows melting through drift and night. Jon Snow, it was said, had vanished on a ranging with wildling scouts. Davos felt the sword gifts like a desperate gamble. Arm the realm's lords, bind them to the crown, and hope their quarrels froze long enough to face the true foe. Yet Davos had known smugglers' bargains. Sometimes, when one weighed debt against duty, the only good choice was a lesser evil. He prayed Dragonstone's forge did not birth a greater one. When the lords gathered beneath the Iron Throne, court heralds announced them in turn. Aenys descended the steps clad not in silk but in dragon-scaled mail, his new blade Nightwing sheathed at his hip, a demonstration, rumor-mongers whispered, that kings would not be last to arm. Corran stood at his side, face chalk-pale, a cloth-wrapped bundle across both arms. One by one the great houses knelt. Each received a sword, unveiled in shocked silence. For House Stark, frostbite, its rippled surface bare as moonlit snow, guard wrought like a direwolf snapping at winter wind. For House Lannister, Oricbane, golden sheen buried beneath dark waves, lion's head pommel roaring silent. For House Tyrell, Thornkis, slender graced, fuller etched with climbing roses that seemed to bloom when turned toward torchlight. For House Baratheon, Stormbreaker, wide-bladed as Robert's old warhammer, antlered crossguard jagged like forked lightning. For House Martell, Sandstrike, curved as a Dornish sun spear, hilt wrapped in red silk, threaded with copper sunbursts. For House Arryn, Skyreach, feather-light yet unyielding, guard-shaped as soaring wings. For House Tully, Riverglint, long and agile, its ripples flowing like moonlight across water. For House Greyjoy, depth-rind, lean and cruel as a kraken's beak, the metal lapping light like tide over black reefs. And to the faith militant, silent light, plain but for a 7-pointed star crystalline at its heart. 10 swords, dread and marvelous, heavy with promise. Torch flames seemed to bend toward them, as moths to brightness. Silence stretched. The hall's winter draught stilled. Then, from the shadows behind the throne, stepped Lady Brienne of Tarth bearing Oathkeeper. Newly sworn to the Kingsguard, she planted her Valyrian blade point down before the throne, the only existing sword to rival the gifts, and knelt. "In steel, we are equals," she said, voice resounding. "May we stand so against the darkness." Applause rippled. Yet watchers noted how every lord's fingers closed white around new hilts, how every eye flicked to rival blades, measuring advantage and threat. That night, frost crept across Blackwater Bay, filming anchors with clear rime. In Maester Corrin's guest cell, candles guttered, though windows were sealed. He turned one final page of his Volantine grimoire and felt the truth claw his belly. The forging was incomplete. Not the metal, its bite was sure, but the binding. He had tied each blade to dragon flame, yet not to a single dragon, as tradition dictated, but to 2, for Aenys had insisted on strength. Moondancer and Stormshroud both breathed into the steel. 2 souls in one spirit vessel. Harmony in theory, conflict in practice. Dragons were jealous creatures. Within those 10 blades, twin fires warred unseen. Snow began to fall in King's Landing. The first flake landed on Frostbite's bare edge and hissed to vapor. Far beyond, in the haunted forest, something ancient smelled that vapor on the wind and turned a face pale as death toward the wall. In her solar, Sansa traced Frostbite's fuller, feeling its cold warm pulse. Memories stirred. Bran's stories of black swords singing at dawn. Jon's quiet grief when Ned's great ice was parted. She should have felt triumph. Instead, dread crawled her spine. The blade whispered. No, listened, as though waiting for command. She sheathed it, heart hammering, and wrote to Jon beyond the wall. "Valyrian steel has come home. Hurry south. The night grows long, and the walls thin." She sealed the letter with black wax. Outside, bells tolled midnight. Somewhere in the red keep a lion and a rose argued over precedence at the royal feast. A kraken counted debts in murky ale. A spear maiden sharpened secrets on a whetstone. 10 swords lay in 10 chambers, each humming with dragonfire, and with rivalry. Above all, moon-silver clouds swallowed the stars. Snow fell harder, as if hurled by unseen hands. Dawn's pale lanterns revealed the first corpse. A gold cloak on patrol, throat slashed not by steel, but by cold so fierce it burned. His eyes, frozen white, gazed toward the north. Maester Kairos muttered of winter wraiths and begged torchlines along the city wall. At court, lords bickered whether the death was sabotage, Lannister gold, Dornish vengeance, northern warning. Aenys heard them out, gaze inward, palm resting on Nightwing's pommel as if the sword told quieter tales. When ravens failed to return from the wall for a second fortnight, panic spread. Reports leaked of Hardhome lost anew, of ghostly armies marshalling on frozen seas. Then Castle Black's last message arrived, an arrow-scored scrap tied to a half-dead raven. "They come, seek fire. Send dragons, else all is lost." Signed by Jon, the ink blotted with frost. Council dissolved into shouting. Send the dragons north? Risk King's Landing undefended. Wait for winter to break. In the uproar, Sansa rose. Frostbite gleamed at her waist. "We either stand as one," she said, voice slicing through the din, "or we fall alone, blade by blade." House by house, silence fell. Even the fire seemed to crouch. Prince Aenys stood beside her. "The North has always been the first shield," he declared. "Now the South must march behind it." His hand curled round Nightwing. "We ride at dawn, dragons with us, swords bared. Stark, Lannister, Tyrell, Baratheon, Martell, Arryn, Tully, Greyjoy. Each lord weighed the cost. And one by one, driven by fear, pride, hope, they nodded. Dragons rose screaming from Dragonstone, wings like storm-torn banners. Fleets unfurled across hard seas. Banners snapped in the cutting wind. Direwolf howling beside lion's roar, rose entwined with stag, spear and sun with falcon's flight, trout leaping beneath kraken's grasp. 10 blades rode north under skies bruised purple. On the wall's broken crown, Jon Snow watched with frost-rimmed lashes as gray geese of smoke smeared the dawn. "They come," he murmured, "not of the living, but of the dead, whose legion shivered the very air." He drew Longclaw, one of the few old Valyrian blades. Soon, new blades would join it. Would that be enough? He touched Ghost's white fur, felt the direwolf's silent snarl. Beyond the wall, snow stirred in shapes of men without heartbeat. They felt the skies kindle with dragonfire. And they kept coming. Night fell on marching hosts. Fires studded the king's road like rubies. In his tent, Tyrion polished Oricbane. Each stroke with the oiled cloth sang like a wire plucked. He remembered his father's dream of power, his sister's monstrous love, his brother's honor buried with a sword now reforged into widow's wail. This new blade felt different, alive, judging him with every flick of candlelight. He wondered if it preferred his death or his redemption. "Blades are stories," he muttered. "Some end in tragedy, some in myth, and some in punchlines too dark to jest." Across the camp, Margaery practiced forms Sir Loras taught her, Thorncus whistling silver arcs. Sparks flared when steel bit practice post. Each time her heart sped. Each time, she pictured the Night King's cold crown shattering under her riposte. In the wind-swept barrows nearby, Sandstrike hummed on Obara's belt, edge thrilled by thoughts of icy blood. Skyreach rested in Sir Robin Arryn's gaunt hands, boy no longer, falcon at last. Riverglint lay across Edmure Tully's knees, trout reflected in its flow. Depthrend hung from Yara Greyjoy's hip, tasting salt wind. Stonebreaker leaned against Gendry's forge-calloused leg, heavy as prophecy. And Frostbite slept beside Sansa, its whisper threading her dreams with visions of a white world where steel sang like wolves. When the first dead rider appeared, pale, crowned with hoarfrost, blade of ice blue as heartbreak, the living army halted. Snow fell harder, muffling breath, clogging hoarse nostrils. The rider sat motionless, eyes like voids. Then it raised its silent horn. The sound was absence, the hush when a hearth dies, the breath before a scream. From the tree line poured whites in their thousands, jaws open in rictus. The ground shook beneath their charge. Dragons screamed in answer. Moondancers stooped, fire washing the vanguard. Storm shroud followed, flame mingling. Bone and ice exploded in showers of steam. Yet where flame guttered, frost wrecked bone. What perished rose anew, unless charred to ash. And under the fire, the snow melted into sucking mud that gripped living boots. "Steel," Aenys shouted, Nightwing blazing black-red as he spurred forward. Sansa leveled Frostbite, voice clear. For the north, Tyrion, Margaery, Gendry, Obara, Edmure, Robin, Yara blaze, lifted in ragged unison, 10 flames gleaming cold. When Valyrian steel met ice forged by sorcery older than sin, the clash rang like bells of glass. Each strike left trails of red-blue sparks. White flesh parted, refusing to mend where dragonflame lived in metal. Yet every kill cost strength, and the dead did not tire. Hours bled. Dragons wearied, their fire sputtering. Then, with a sound like distant thunder, Moondancer shrieked. An arrow of black ice lodged in her throat. She toppled, wing striking Stormshroud, and both dragons crashed into forest, fire gouting helplessly. Within the 10 blades, twin fires warred in sudden fury. Stormshroud's heart, seeing its sibling fall, raged. Moondancer's dying spirit flared, refusing to fade. Steel heated, hilts scalding palms. Swords keened with strange harmonics. Sansa nearly dropped Frostbite. Margaery gasped as Thorncus hissed steam. Corran's warning surfaced in memory. 2 souls in one vessel cannot endure. Nightwing brightened to furnace white. Aenys stared, entranced. The sword tugged him north, toward the Night King astride a dead elk. The ancient enemy raised its ice blade in silent challenge. "Aenys, no!" Sansa cried. But the prince charged alone, dragon flame whirling about him like a solar flare. Blade met blade. For a heartbeat, the world paused. Fire and ice fused, a pillar of red-blue light spearing the heavens. The explosion hurled men from saddles, melted snow in a ring 100 yards wide. Silence crashed after like falling shale. At its center, Aenys knelt, hand fused to Nightwing's hilt, eyes incandescent. The Night King's blade lay shattered, yet the creature still stood, frost streaming from ruined fingers. Nightwing flickered, Moondancer's last breath within it guttering. Then Stormshroud's fury surged. The steel broke with a sound like thunder cracking iron skies. Light died, and the Night King smiled. Darkness billowed outward. Snow turned black, air froze solid. The living staggered, blades dimming. Frostbite dulled to gray. Dorncas's rose etchings withered. Auric-Bane lost its shimmer. In every sword, the duel of dragons ended with both mortally wounded. The magic stilled. A white's talons closed on Sansa's cloak. She swung, metal biting, but frost welded chips across the edge. Obara's sand strike snapped on a wraith's rib. Tyrion parried twice before Auric-Bane cracked down the middle, spraying cinders. Around them the line faltered. Jon Snow emerged from drifting white, long claw blazing its steady glow untouched by dragon tumult, its forging singular, old and sure. Ghost bounded at his heels, crimson-jawed. "Southlings!" he roared above the storm. "Back to light. Rally on me." They fell toward him, despair chasing. At Jon's signal, ranks parted for Melisandre and the red priests of Orelor, torches high, chanting Gain. Walls of fire answered, licking back the dark. Not enough. But a heartbeat's hope. Sansa met Jon's gaze across a churn of flame and snow. In his eyes she saw their father's stubborn love, and in her chest something cold hardened into steel, not made by forges. Frostbite's broken edge glimmered. A memory awoke. Corran's claim that each blade bound its wielder's fate. But fates could be reforged, as Ned's ice once had. All required was heat and will. "Jon," she rasped, voice raw. "The swords are dying, but dragonfire lives. We must choose one flame." Jon understood. He looked to the fallen dragons, Stormshroud stirring weakly amid smoking tree trunks. "Then we choose life," he said. They ran, whites swarming. The last unbroken Valyrian blade met snowy air as Jon cut a path. Behind him, lords and ladies bore shattered relics, grim resolve. Ghost harried flanks, red priests flung torrents of wildfire. Stormshroud, breath-wheezing embers, lifted a scorched head as they approached. Jon met its molten eye, thinking of Dany's dragons, of kings and bastards, of the weight of impossible choices. He offered Longclaw's hilt. "One heart," he whispered. "One flame." The dragon's exhale lit the sword white-hot. Metal drank the fire, glowed brighter than dawn. In that blaze Jon plunged Frostbite's stump, Dorncas's roses, Auric-Bane's halves, every ruined shard. Steel fused, ripples flowing like living silver. Maester Corran, half dead nearby, gasped at the miracle his failures made possible. "A single soul," he croaked. "So mote it be." Jon grasped the newborn blade, broader than Longclaw, lighter than air, its surface a storm of rippling light and dark. He named it Heartfire then and there. Sansa took her brother's left hand. Gendry set Stormbreaker's broken antlers as crossguard. Margaery laced her thorngold seeds into the hilt's leather wrap. "Dad," Tyrion whispered, a jest to gild silence. Obara's blood-smeared red suns upon the fuller. Edmure, Robin, Yara, even Brienne added tokens. 10 houses, 1 steel. Heartfire flared, casting shadows of direwolf and lion, rose and kraken, falcon and spear upon the snow. The Night King felt its birth and keened. The dead surged, white tide rushing. Jon stepped forward, eyes reflecting living flame. "Together," he said. They charged. Heartfire met ancient ice. And the dawn, against all odds, began to bleed across the sky. The wind had the bite of shattered glass and carried with it the screams of men and things that had never been men. Jon felt the weight of every heartbeat as he led the charge across the churned snowfield. Heartfire blazing in his grip, like dawn distilled into steel. The blade's glow washed crimson and gold over the chaos, spilling colors into a world gone gray with death. Ghost bounded ahead, fur caked with rime and blood, a white shadow splitting dead ranks. At Jon's other side ran Sansa, her broken frostbite dagger raised like a shard of moon. Where Heartfire carved through whites, they stayed down. No resurrection, no twitch of cursed sinew, proof that the double-forged miracle still held power enough to sever the last thread that bound corpses to iceborne sorcery. Tyrion Lannister stumbled through knee-deep drifts, blood stiffening the fur on his collar. Auric Bane lay shattered, but his hands still clutched the bronze-bound haft. Anything could be a weapon, he reminded himself, even the splintered ruins of a dream. To his surprise, the dead gave him a berth, as though some half-remembered promise of debt kept their claws at bay. He laughed once. The sound cracked, then drove the haft through the eye socket of a wight that dared the margin. Splinters bit his palm. Steam curled from the corpse as whatever remnant of magic animated it hissed away. He spat pink into the snow, muttering that battlefield dentistry was never in his contract. Shafts of dull light leaked through the piled clouds, yet true sunrise refused to break. The sky hung poised in perpetual twilight, as though the world itself held breath witnessing the duel that now unfolded at the center. Jon Snow faced the Night King on a ridge of packed ice, glazed with dragon flame. Around them the armies clashed with the savage intimacy of butcher and carcass, but upon that crest, the struggle condensed into pure myth. Heartfire hummed in Jon's grasp, its heat pulsing against the near-absolute zero radiating from the Night King's sword of crystallized winter. Between blade and blade sparks crackled. Red and blue, life and entropy writ in lightning filaments. Sansa watched her brother's first lunge, feet gliding over ice that cracked under lesser boots, and felt all the tales old Nan ever told briefly take form in flesh. The Night King parried with an economy that defied physics, a serpent-quick twist that turned Jon's momentum against him. Ice and flame mated in a clash that spat shards of molten glass and permafrost over the crest, hissing where they landed. Jon rolled beneath a riposte, cloak sweeping a halo in his wake, and Heartfire spun overhead to catch a second stroke that might have cleaved the sun from the sky. Each time the swords met, the ridge shrieked like a living thing nailed to iron. In the melee below, Margaery Tyrell whirled Thorncus's broken half as if it were still whole, the jagged tip transmuted to deadly hook. Loras fought beside her, his once fabled grace slowed by old burns, yet every measured stroke guarded her back. When a wight nearly seized her braids, his shield slammed its jaw to powder. She blew him a quick kiss between breaths, and for an instant they were children playing in Highgarden's training yard again. Wooden swords and daisy chains under a sun that never set, until the dead rushed in anew and swept nostalgia away like petals in a gale. Edmure Tully held the left flank with Robin Arryn. Riverglint had fractured near the tip, leaving a shortsword of smoldering Valyrian core. Edmure wielded it like a river spear, letting the dead impale themselves on its hunger. Robin's sky reach, though cracked, retained enough balance to dart in phalanx gaps like a diving kestrel. Both men had lost helms. Frost rimed their hair, and a raw mix of terror and resolve glazed their eyes. Still, they stood, shoulders touching when the swarm pressed hardest, heirs of river and sky anchoring one another in the whirlwind. Brienne drove Oathkeeper in great sweeps to protect wounded lines retreating toward the ridge. The blade, untouched by Corrin's flawed magic, rang true each time it slammed dead steel. A web of rents laced her breastplate. Her breath sawed harsh and bloody, but she did not falter. Beside her knelt Maester Corrin, gauntlets off, palms slashed open in a glyph of surrender to whatever ancient forces might still be listening. He traced runes in his own blood onto shards of nightwing strewn across the snow, mouth forming syllables that vibrated in a pitch felt more than heard, coaxing sleeping lines of power to ripple outward toward Jon. Not far off, Yara Greyjoy assembled a knot of ironborn shield-bearers around Stormshroud's crumpled head. The dragon's breaths came thin, each exhale a weak flash of embers that extinguished immediately in the wind. Yara climbed the serpent-scaled neck. Depthrins remained strapped crosswise, each step sinking deeper than the last as scales sloughed like molten armor. She pressed her forehead to the beast's cracked horn. "Breathe for us, old terror," she whispered, the words alien in a throat used to orders barked across spray-lashed decks. Perhaps the dragon understood. One hollow eye flickered. The Night King lifted his free hand during a lull and spread long fingers toward the crater where Moondancer's corpse lay. From that grave, fragments of obsidian cold ice rose and coalesced into spear-tips, then lance-long javelins. With a flick, they hurtled toward the living line. Jon saw them first, but distance offered no time. Marguerite raised her broken swordhook instinctively. It would have been nothing before the volley. At the last instant, Tyrion hurled the haft of Oricbane, not at the spears, but at the cliff above. Snow cascaded, the avalanche swallowing the frozen missiles before their full arc. Tyrion landed hard, half buried, yet laughed through broken ribs. Always bet on gravity. Jon sized that sliver of distraction. Heartfire's tip dipped, traced a sigil on the air. Wolf, dragon, rose, lion, every house bound in heat. He lunged. The Night King recovered to parry, but for once the blue blade quaked under the impact. Edge spider webbing with hairline cracks. A fissure of warmth blossomed through the icy torso. Smoke rolling from within. The ancient creature's face registered neither pain nor surprise, but something in its eyes deepened, as though remembering mortality. Yet still, it endured. The fissure sealed, winter knitting bone and rime. Jon's fury met futility. Heartfire flickered. Stormshroud's lone heart was failing. Sansa joined him, her dagger stub glinting. "We break him together," she said. Jon shook his head. One blade still burned. One flame remained. She pressed closer. "Together or not at all, brother." She laid her hand atop his on the hilt. Threads of half-dormant dragonfire from frostbite bled through her gauntlet, Moondancer's spirit meeting Stormshroud's ember inside Heartfire. Steel brightened to blinding gold. The Night King raised both arms, summoning a blizzard that turned air to knives. Some force repelled the gale from the siblings. Snowflakes caught mid-fall like stars suspended. Jon and Sansa stepped forward in stillness and swung. Heartfire cleaved the air with a peal like temple bells ringing underwater. It met the Night King's wrist. White steel slipped through unnatural flesh as if dream smoke. Dismembered hand and weapon tumbled. Spinning crystal shards. Jon pivoted, and Sansa guided the second cut upward through ribcage, spine, and the frozen gemstone heart rumored to beat there. Nothing happened. Then the Night King's form exploded into a cyclone of rime. Where it vanished, the sun's first true ray pierced the clouds and struck Heartfire, setting the blade aflame with daylight. A ripple passed across the battlefield. Whites froze mid-lunge, throats emitting a single unearthly chime, then collapsed into lifeless corpses that would never rise. Silence followed, heavy as a bell's last echo. Wind returned to the world, ordinary and cold and blessedly mortal. Jon lowered the blade. Sansa released her grip more slowly, unwilling to trust the miracle. Heartfire's white blaze cooled to steady ember. Beneath the hush, the wall groaned, a sound no stone should make. Maester Corran tottered up, eyes blood-ringed. "The Night King was a cork in a bottle," he stammered. "His death frees what lies beneath." Far off, a section of the wall collapsed with a roar. Of it billowed blue mist that formed the silhouette of a horned giant before dissipating. The echo carried a note of triumph older than ice. Robin Arryn whispered. The others were only his lieutenants. No one contradicted. They rallied what remained, stoked fires, sorted wounded. Snow ceased near midnight, clouds cracked to reveal bruised stars. 10 pyres burned for 10 shattered swords. Orncus, auric bane, frostbite's larger shard, riverglint's tip. They fed flames laced with rose petals, gold slivers, river reeds. Yara kept Depthrin's spike lashed to her forearm, calling it her new kraken's tooth. Near dawn, John addressed the host. Winter's heart was broken, yet something older stirred beneath the frost. They must march beyond the wall. An expedition formed of 50. Jon, Sansa, Tyrion, Margaery, Gendry, Yara, Robin, Edmure, Brienne, Corran, Red Priests, wildling scouts, and a dozen children of the forest who emerged from hidden groves when summoned by Sansa's half-remembered weirwood songs. They crossed the breach, entering lands no map claimed. A valley crater 5 leagues across, at whose center a glacier bulged and cracked around coils of something enormous. Agharad, the dusk thing, dreamed there. They built a forward camp. 3 plans debated: swift death by heartfire, slow venting with dragonglass mines, or lullaby binding. They chose the hybrid. Sansa began her song, an old Nan lullaby braided with children's leaf tongue. Ice sang back, the glaciers groaning ceasing as coils stilled. Yet a comet flared overhead, ancient screams riding its tail. Agharad awoke. A fragment of glacier sheared away, revealing navy ember scales. The lullaby faltered. Echo of primordial consciousness battered Sansa.d. Mines planted by Yara detonated. Wildfire green roared in the wound, driving the serpent to rise. A continent of living frost. Jon, Brienne, and Gendry climbed the exposed scale. Heartfire bit. Aurora blood gushed. Jon wormed through a breach into a cathedral of light inside the beast, toward its fractal heart. Visions tempted him with every step, and Ygritte, Daenerys, but he chose forward. He plunged Heartfire into the heart sphere. Resonance detonated. Reality tore. Jon's body vaporized, yet consciousness fused with blade and beast. He whispered, "Rest." Agharad collapsed, coils imploding until only a fossil spiral of pale crystals remained on the valley floor. Dust cleared. In a crater 50 feet deep stood Heartfire embedded in stone. Beside it lay scraps of torn cloak. Sansa found a spark, pulsing like an infant heartbeat. She placed it at the sword's guard. Metal drank glow, building a man shape from dawn light. Jon Snow breathed again, eyes glowing faintly, still himself yet more. They returned to the wall. New ice had grown, sealing the breach. Stormshroud slept, but breathed steady. No white stirred anywhere. Winter's grip loosened. Spring timidly painted crocus over battlefields. Statues to the fallen rose from Valyrian marble fragments Gendry forged. Margaery sowed golden seeds across the north. Robin commissioned sky towers manned by knights of every house. Yara refitted her longships for trade. Corran retired to Dragonstone and forged only clocks that chimed to living hearts. Jon wandered the realm, healing scorched fields, warming orphanages, refusing crowns. People called him the Dawn Walker. In the Reach, the golden fields of Hornhill hosted the first assembly of petals, a convocation where small folk, knights and maesters, debated policy beneath pavilions woven from harvested rose stems. Margaery opened proceedings with a song, an echo of Sansa's lullaby now reborn as planting hymn. When the chorus ended, thrushes lit upon tent poles, mimicking the melody until the wheat bowed in rhythmic waves. Old gardeners swore the sound coaxed barley sprouts 3 days early. Along the Trident, Edmure oversaw dredging crews that hauled up armor and bones from decades of strife. Each helm was stamped with its fallen owner's sigil and melted in mobile forges hauled by oxen. Ingots of anonymous steel traveled upriver to become 40 identical footbridges, linking villages once divided by currents and suspicion. When asked why 40, Edmure replied, "It matched the number of rivers feeding the greater Trident, and so healed each tributary scar with unity's weld." Yara Greyjoy returned to Pike, trailing legends. that she surfed a world serpent scale, that she saw a man reborn from dawn's marrow. She laughed and refitted her longships with shallow keels for river trade. Tidal markets soon rang with Carthian silk vendors, haggling beside Shield Island vintners. Priests of the drowned god protested. She tossed them a purse, heavy with coins minted in Heartfire's glow, and said profits float better than corpses. High in the Eyrie, Robin Arryn opened Skyreach Eyrie, a tower-top school teaching falconry, arithmetic, and the ethics of power. A broken shard of Skyreach sat in glass there, dulled by frost and time as a reminder that weapons are chapters, not volumes. Pupils from mountain clans and lowland farms studied side by side, tracing maps of constellations visible only from high passes. On clear nights Robin joined them, pointing out the faint trail left by the red comet, calling it the ghost of winter gone. At Winterfell, Sansa revived the Wintertown moot, inviting voices from every holdfast to air grievances before harvest feasts. Her court listened by crackling hearths, shadows thrown by braziers gendry, designed so each flame reflected in hammered copper wolves. When Jon visited, he sat not in the Lord's chair but on the bench beside a weaver and a stable boy, laughing when bull-bread broth dripped into his beard, glowing faint ember at edges. He carried Heartfire wrapped in plain wool, unsheathing it only to carve runes of renewal into broken castle stones that needed binding. Far away, Maester Corran sealed his final treatise, Magna Confluentia, arguing that magic behaves less like a river and more like two oceans colliding, chaos at the seam birthing storms, but also fertile upwellings. He sent copies via Raven to every citadel, appending, "Remember the storms, but harvest the bounty too." Some archmaesters scoffed. Others felt the paper warming between their fingers, almost breathing. Across the sea, in the ruins of Valyria where Brightroar once vanished, a flare of pale light bloomed, witnessed by gulls and ghosts. Water boiled, releasing a crystal bubble that drifted skyward, burst into ash, singing in a tongue no man alive recalled, then spiraled back into the smoking sea. Had any watcher shared Jon Snow's sight, they might have noticed the ash pattern matched the fossil print in the distant north, as though 2 points on the world now spoke the same quiet promise. Season by season the realm stitched itself with small wonders, guided not by decree from a single throne, but by echoes of a sword made from many hearts. And whenever lantern moths circled watchfires on crisp nights, children swore they glimpsed sparks of orange and gold in the fluttering wings. Some said the Dawnwalker had passed unseen, leaving only warmth enough to frighten the next frost away. B. Mist rose from the valley where Igi-Karat had writhed its last, seeping through hollows and fissures in languid coils that glittered with the faintest echo of dawnfire. Jon watched from the lip of the newly frozen breach in the wall, as white vapor drifted upward, caught sunrise, and turned gold. Each glittering thread dissipated in the wind, leaving behind an air scrubbed clean of dread. All through him hummed a strange calm, not the fragile calm of exhaustion, but the steady resonance of a bell that had at last found its true pitch. His hand lingered on Heartfire's grip. The sword no longer burned bright. It glowed with a tempered warmth, as though a hearthstone had been forged into steel and slotted into the world's cold weave. Jon felt its pulse answer the beating of his own heart. Light, then a half-beat echo, like two voices reciting the same prayer, 2 breaths apart. Somewhere within that secret cadence lived the spark that had carried him from formless ash back into flesh, and he wondered if part of him would forever belong to the blade. Behind him the camp on the southern side of the wall stirred under a sifting snow as soft as sifted flour. Tents sagged with frost. Chimneys coughed pale threads of smoke. Banner poles glittered ice sheaths. The direwolf, the rose, the kraken, the falcon, the trout. Only the lion's banner lay furled. Tyrion had insisted on packing it away at dawn, claiming the Lannisters had roared long enough for one winter. He heard boots crunching over crusted snow. Sansa emerged from a drifted path, cheeks raw in the wind, a strand of copper hair stolen from her braid. In both hands she carried a wooden case wrapped in a black bear pelt. Samuel arrived by Raven, she said without greeting. He's with Bran at Winterfell. They've found something in the archives beneath the first keep. Fragments that speak of a second doom in Valyria. Jon's brows drew together. Valyria. An echo? She said, setting the case on a stump frosted white. Bran thinks the aftershock you felt, when the Night King died, rippled all the way across the world. The three-eyed stag in him saw fires waking under the smoking sea. Sam says it might birth storms greater than the doom if left unchecked. Jon stared south, though the horizon revealed only morning fog. We paid in blood to close one wound. Can the realm bleed again? And now? Bran believes it mustn't. Her gaze flicked to the case. He sent this. Jon knelt, slid the pelt aside, and lifted the lid. Inside lay a single fragment of ancient obsidian, its surface etched with thin spirals and 8 pointed stars. It thrummed faintly, a cousin resonance to heartfires. Under the shard lay an aged scrap of vellum bearing 2 lines scrawled in Sam's hand. Dragonfire seals the sky. Obsidian seals the sea. Jon closed the box. A gate of glass, he murmured. One we have to shut before it opens. Sansa nodded. The ravens you and I sent have returned. Lords Arryn, Greyjoy and Tully ready fleets. Margaery sends grain and healers. Tyrion is mustering engineers. Brienne rides ahead with Gendry to Winterfell to fetch Bran himself. Jon's fingers tightened on Heartfire. Valyria swallows fleets whole. We'll sail with more than wood and iron. Sansa said, We'll sail with every voice of the realm at our backs. She touched his arm, bare gloveless skin against his hardened leather, and he felt warmth far beyond body heat. In her eyes, the fear he'd known since they were children had given way to a clearer strength, a resolve hammered by grief and hope alike. When do we leave? He asked. Soon as the thaw frees Blackwater Bay. She glanced skyward. And before the comet's tail fades. 10 days later, the great assembly took place upon the muddy grounds outside King's Landing, where tents of every color crowded each other, like bright mushrooms after rain. Spring pushed its first tender shoots through churned earth. A chorus of hammering rose from makeshift shipyards along the Blackwater's curve. Carpenters under Gendry's supervision drove iron nails through hull ribs wide enough for mammoths to walk between. Each vessel's keel had been reinforced with plates forged of dawn steel, an alloy Corran had devised by tempering common iron in the residual glow of Heartfire, then bathing it in brine imbued with powdered obsidian. Corran himself stood in a canvas workshop, gaunt but steady, lips cracked dark with soot. He hovered over a cauldron where shards of broken Valyrian blades melted into a shimmering pool. Tyrion stood opposite, an improvised set of bellows strapped to his shoulders. Each time he exhaled, gears squeaked and a rush of air brightened the molten metal to the color of sunset. Never thought you'd recruit me as your scullion, Tyrion muttered between pumps. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, Corran rasped. We require the breath of one who's survived Dragonfire. I add it to my growing resume. Corran dipped a rod and drew out the liquid in delicate filigree, before letting it cool into a lattice fine as a spider's web. Each fragment retains memory of its forging. If we weave them together, perhaps they will remember unity better than discord. Tyrion let his weight rest on the bellows straps. You still fear a second fracture. Corran's gaze drifted to a plank stack where the remnants of Nightwing lay in silken wraps, their edges dull. Harmony is fragile. Even Dawnsteel hums with a rivalry of fires, though calmer than before. If Valyria erupts, every strain of magic in the world may resonate. We must build vessels that can sing a lullaby, not scream dissonance. Memsau. Tyrion's mind raced through half a dozen quips, but he discarded them. Then teach me the tune, Maester. By moonrise the first flagship slid into the Blackwater. She was christened Morning Star, her prow carved in the likeness of a direwolf and dragon intertwined. Gendry smacked the hull approvingly, sapwood scent mingling with salt air. Brienne stood beside him, hair newly scaled short for the voyage. A practical cut, she claimed, though Gendry suspected she'd shorn away the last whispers of winter's grief. When the crew gathered around barrels of fresh ale, Brienne raised her mug. "To those who keep forging when the metal cracks," she said. Gendry lifted his. A ring of steel and pottery answered. Somewhere in the city, bells chimed 10th after midnight, and the fires of the forges burned on. The fleet departed 2 weeks later. 32 ships, half longships refitted with rotating oar cranks, half deep-keeled traders, escorted by a pair of iron-born stormbreakers trimmed in silver. Yara Greyjoy commanded the vanguard aboard Sea's Sigh, Depthrin's shard mounted on the bowsprit, where it flashed like a crescent moon. Above, Stormshroud's sword, the last living dragon, Wounded Wing patched with sailcloth sutures. Sansa rode in a sling strapped behind the wing joint, Bran's raven perched on her wrist. Jon stood on the forecastle deck of Morningstar below, one fist wrapped around Heartfire's scabbard, as though it were the ship's true mast. Word had spread across Westeros and beyond. The Dawnwalker's fleet sailed to quell the slumbering sea. In taverns, minstrels set new verses to old shanties. In Old Town, Citadel archmaesters argued over maps that smoldered when candleflame touched Valyria's outline. In the free cities, merchants wagered fortunes on whether the smoking sea would boil or freeze. And in the summer isles, a blind seer dreamt of a blade drifting beneath black water, singing lullabies to leviathans. The voyage south passed first through days of gentle rollers and nights salted with starlight. Tyrion, appointed quartermaster by default, because you measure spirits in both senses, Jon had teased, inventoried water casks and fig stores, cursed mildew and told bawdy jokes to keep sailors from brooding when the sea fog settled. Margaery, wearing a short sailor's jerkin over a gown that smelled faintly of rose oil, tended to crew bruises with salves. Samwell had prepared. She lined the gunwales with potted herbs, claiming the green would chase melancholia. Spring mint sprouted on the 7th morning, and sailors swore the breeze tasted sweeter. Robin Arryn climbed the rigging daily, charting wind currents with a small copper vane. Each night, he reported to Sansa, who mapped their course not only by starlight, but by Bran's half-heard murmurings through the raven. Bran spoke seldom in full sentences now. "Currents twist," he would croak. "The sea remembers what the land forgets." Sansa wrote every phrase in a journal bound with direwolf hide, fearing each might prove cipher to future storms. Edmure Tully drilled archers on the aft deck. Instead of arrows, they loosed shafts wrapped in cotton dipped into whale oil that burned pale blue. Flames that, by Corran's judgment, might hold integrity even when licked by volatile, smoking sea vapors. He and Gendry crafted wicker ballista bolts with hollow tips to carry the oil farther. Every innovation was a prayer answered by combustion. As for Yara, she prowled among her ironborn, scanning horizons. Twice she turned aside Lysine revenue cutters intent on plunder. Depthrin's shard needled the sun like a threat too clear to mistake. Both captains veered away, leaving only whipping spume banners in their wakes. On the 17th day a hush fell. Not the comforting hush of calm seas, but an aching void where wind ceased to exist. The sails slackened. Masts quit creaking. The sky turned a pastel gray that flattened the ocean into quicksilver. Sansa felt the raven shake on her wrist, feathers lifting though no breeze stirred. Bran's voice cracked through its beak. "We near the breathless belt. Do not breathe deep." Jon ordered tar cloths, wrapped round every face. Stormshroud banked in uneasy circles, refusing to glide closer to the water. From the lee of each ship, bubbles rose. Clusters at first, then frothing chains, as if the sea exhaled despair too ancient and heavy to float. A fetid egg rot smell coated tongues even through cloth. Men gagged. One fainted. In the stillness, soft popping sounds drifted, wet bladders bursting somewhere beneath. Tyrion cursed vivid metaphors under muffled breath. Margaery approached the railing, herb pouch pressed over her nose, and watched a single fish belly up float past, scales dull ivory. Its eye socket had no eye. A gummy web stretched where the orb should be. Behind it drifted another, and another, until the fleet cut through a silent funeral of nameless carrion. Corran's voice croaked over deck timbers. The desolation tides, he told the nearest sailor. "Where Valyria breathes its poison into the sea." Jon moved upwind, hand on heartfire. The blade's core glowed faint, but not with heat, more like a pulse of warning. An hour into the belt, the first hull creaked, not with wind but from within. Fisher's Prayer, a small Manderley's transport, shuddered. Then an explosion of black water and shredded planks geysered 30 feet high amidships. Something long and boneless spilled over the starboard rail, skin translucently white, veins throbbing with luminous turquoise ichor. It slapped deckboards, convulsed, and rolled overboard, leaving a smear that hissed upon contact with air. The ship heeled, men screamed for pumps. Jon shouted for all vessels to spread keels, but the current locked them tight. "Row," rang the order. Oars bit opaque water with slurping gasps. Across the fleet, sporadic detonations of trapped gas shook beams, loosening rivets. The calm sea had become a cauldron where pressure gnashed at wood. "Hold fast," Edmure roared. Slinging whale oil torches into slicks that ignited with dull blue flame. Where fire spread, the churning stilled. Bubbles burst harmlessly beneath scorched scum. Storm shrouds' roar split the heavy air, followed by a gout of flame so narrow it looked like a fiery lance. The dragon strafed a patch directly ahead of Morningstar, burning a passage. The air shimmered. Corrin's voice echoed spells to draw toxic vapors upward into sparkling moats. After 3 harrowing hours, sails caught a whisper of wind. Rowers collapsed against benches wet with more sweat than sea. As the fleet moved beyond the belt, the sky's gray gave way to bruised amber. The smoking sea greeted them. Valyria's broken annulus lay ahead, a ring of jagged islands, each crowned by plumes of smoke that rose sluggishly into air already too heavy with ash. The stench of brimstone mingled with something sweeter, almost floral, that made nostrils ache. Pausing outside the ring, captains gathered aboard Morningstar. Maps were unrolled. Bran's raven hopped across them, pecking at an island shaped like a crescent. Bran's voice rasped. 4 vents conjoin there, sing them shut. Corrin spread shards of nightwing on the table. We cast these into each vent. The obsidian and the alloy will urge fusion, but only if blessed in dragonfire at the moment of fracture. He looked to Jon. Jon looked to storm shroud circling overhead. The dragon still favored its wounded wing. Flying deep into poisonous plumes risked its life. Jon's heart clenched. Storm shroud was the world's last furnace of living fire. Without it, no other forge could shape such magic. Tyrion cleared his throat. "I've a suggestion so mad it might be sane," he said, tapping the filigree discs Corrin had crafted from melted shards. "What if instead of dragonfire, we channel heartfire through a conductor? Less risk to our scaly friend." Corrin's brow furrowed. "Metal alone can't contain that flame. It needs a living circuit." Margaery stepped between them. "We have living circuits. Us. 10 houses gave blood to this sword. Let house and blade close the vent together. Then nip her out." Silence pooled. Then Yara slapped the table. "Sounds like drowning with extra steps, but if meddling with fire keeps my hull afloat, I'll lend my veins." Robin nodded. Edmure gripped his trout emblem cloak, clasp. Even Tyrion's shoulders squared, though his eyes had the look of a man marching into a lecture he'd rather skip. Jon sheathed the sword with finality. "Then we sing together." Teams rowed ashore at dusk. The chosen island rose like a broken fang, its slopes restless with steam jets. Jagged obsidian shards lay everywhere, some larger than wagons, all glassy smooth and warm underfoot. Vegetation clung in spattered patches. Crimson moss, vine clusters bearing pale blue blossoms that spat spores. Stormshroud refused to land. The dragon perched upon a basalt column off the coast, tail lashing waves to foam. Sansa led the advance up a rubble-strewn gully. Bran's raven perched on her shoulder, head swiveling in micro-jerks. At intervals, Bran whispered directions. At times his voice faltered, replaced by the soft click of beak against bone. She felt him slipping further from the mortal plane, each vision drawing him closer to the weirwood of all time. The gully opened into a crater plateau where 4 vents hissed sulfur in a ring around a pool of roiling quicksilver lava. Every few breaths, a bubble would form, stretch, and pop, spraying beads that hardened into glassy droplets midair before clinking down like hail. Corin set the first filigree disc on a basalt lip. Each disc was a wheel of spider-fine Valyrian strands woven around an obsidian core. Tyrion paced between vents, calculating angles, as though placing mirrors for a theater trick. He paused, recalling a childhood lesson on organ pipes. Where standing waves met, silence blossomed. With a broken chalk, he marked runes on stone, geometry to coax sound into symmetry. Margaery, Yara, Edmure, Robin, Sansa, Joan, Tyrion, Corin, plus 2 wildling spearwives who had lost children to the frost, formed a circle. Each placed a palm on Heartfire's flat, its glow brightening with each touch until it hummed like a hive. Jon lifted the blade high. In the molten reflections of the vents, he saw all their faces, a mosaic of lineage, bound by the sword's heat, the realm condensed into 12 souls. He began to sing. Not a song he knew. It rose unbidden. Threads of ancient Valyrian, intertwined with the wordless croon High North mothers used to hush babes. Sansa's alto slid under his tenor, then Margaery's clear soprano, deepened by Yara's husky chord, Robin's brittle treble, Edmure's baritone, Tyrion's rasp half-laughter, Corin's cracked whisper, and finally the ululating cry of the wildling women. The vents answered. Their howls modulated, drawing closer to the human pitch. Steam spirals curved inward. The surface of the lava pool smoothed until it mirrored the sky's dying light. Tyrion nodded to Corin, who set a shard of nightwing on the rim. Jon touched the shard's tip with Heartfire. A spark leapt, a filament of incandescent gold that wove through the filigree disc like a seamstress's needle. The disc shone, then liquefied into a ribbon that slid into the vent, corking it with molten glass. A low thump shook the ground. They repeated for the second vent, then the third. Each time the earth absorbed the song more readily, as though craving the melody. At the 4th vent, Bran's raven shrieked. The pool convulsed. A column of silver magma rose, coalescing into the silhouette of a woman carved of mirror. She had no eyes, yet somehow stared. In Valyrian she spoke, a dialect so old only Corin understood fragments. Who silences the mother's breath? Their voices faltered. Wind scoured ash across the plateau. The column-shaped arms, reaching. Jon felt Heartfire's pulse double. He thrust the blade down, point kissing the disc at the final vent. The mirror woman lashed a tendril of quicksilver toward him. It struck the edge of Heartfire and ricocheted into the vent mouth. Instantly, the obsidian core sucked the liquid inward like a thirsty sponge. The woman shrieked, soundless yet felt in marrow. Her form collapsed into rivulets that drained away. Silence. Then the vents exhaled one last plume, pure white, before sealing into pearly crusts. All 4 glowed like moons. Exhaustion flattened them. Yara collapsed first, palm-skinned. Margaery wept silently. Sansa looked to the raven. It had gone still. She thought Bran gone at last. But a soft croak emerged. The sea sleeps. Keep watch. Thunder rumbled beneath their boots, deep, rolling, but receding. The ground cooled. Valyria's rings of steam thinned, their columns drifting apart. Overhead, storm shrouds' roar carried triumph. Molten droplets fell no longer. Instead, brief sparks danced on the air and winked out like fireflies. Jon lowered Heartfire. Its glow dimmed to ember. He looked from face to face. Soot masked features, but eyes gleamed bright. "It's done," he said. Tyrion puffed a shaky breath. "Closing God's wounds. Add that to our talents." Edmure laughed. "Shaky." Robin managed a grin. Corin slumped, leaning on a basalt spike, but smiling faintly, muttering that harmony held. In the hush, a tremor passed. Not beneath but through them, a flick of resonance that felt like memories sliding into place. Far below, magma conduits realigned, though they could not see. Far above, the comet's tail grew a shade paler, as though the heavens sighed. They returned to the ships at dawn pink with volcanic dust. Rowers pulled thicker breaths. The stench had lessened. Sails rose to a breeze that carried hints of jasmine and wet stone, rather than sulfur. On deck, John stood beside Marguerite as she unrolled a fresh chart. "If Bran is right," she said, "the vents will cool the smoking sea, letting currents flow westward again. Trade routes could reopen within a decade." John nodded absently, eyes on Stormshroud riding warm thermals above. "And what of the magic we sealed? Will it stay asleep?" "Nothing sleeps forever," she said. "But we bought time enough to teach the realm new lullabies." Yara sauntered past, Depthrin's shard glinting under salt spray. "I'll wager the Iron Bank of Bravos sends envoys by next summer," she remarked. "They'll smell opportunity where we smell ash." Tyrion, overhearing, chuckled. "Fine. Let them tally their ledgers. We'll tally our breaths, far more valuable." A collective sigh rippled through the fleet as anchors weighed. Bows turned northwards. The sails bellied, hulls sliced calm swells. Behind them the island ring receded, steam plumes faint as candles. John leaned against the rail. Heartfire rested at his hip, quiet. Sansa joined him, journal in hand. She opened to a blank page, dipped quill, and wrote a single line. "Today we learned even ashes can bloom." She looked up, caught his gaze, and smiled a smile he had not seen since Winterfell's godswood, first budding in spring those many lifetimes ago. Ahead lay months of return voyage, then years of labor, rebuilding holdfasts, guiding crops, tempering justice. Politics would grind anew. Lords would feud. Winters would come again. But beneath every hearthstone of every house in Westeros, a quiet pulse would echo the song they had sung at the world's molten heart. John knew stories would twist with time. Sailors would speak of mirror maidens, of dragons' roaring symphonies, of a sword forged from the dawn itself. Most would forget the toll, the fear, the lullaby's fragile thread. Yet, some would remember. Enough, he hoped, to keep watch. Stormshroud banked low, casting a single vast shadow over Morningstar. Sailors glanced skyward, awe still undimmed. The dragon's wings cupped the sun. Gaze across the deck, like gold coins. John tipped his face to the light and closed his eyes. He let the spray bead on his lashes, let the hum of Heartfire fade into the broader hush of waves, wind, and the 1,000 heartbeats aboard. Somewhere within that sound lay the promise Bran's raven had spoken. Keep watch. He opened his eyes. In the distance, a line of gulls wheeled above an islet, where none had nested for centuries. Their cries were ordinary, gloriously so. Sharp, hungry, full of life. John reached for the ship's bell rope and rang a single clear note across the water. "North," he called. "For home." And the fleet turned its bows to where the sky met sea, carrying dawn-steel keels, broken blade stories, and a lullaby strong enough to hush dragons and gods alike. For now. Okay. Ija. The last of the smoking seas, ash dissolved to mist on the horizon, and with it, the faint echo of the Mirror Woman's cry. Westeros' patched fleet, keels lined in fresh dawn steel, rode homeward under the cool arch of a spring sky that felt impossibly wide after the sulfur tomb of Valyria. By the second week north of the breathless belt, the world regained familiar colors. Indigo at dawn, green where sea met, shallow coastal shelves, white where Stormshroud's contrails scrawled a signature across morning. Jon Snow woke earlier than most, a habit shaped by campaign life and the quieter cadence of his new heart. He paced the forecastle deck with Ghost trotting beside, pale tail a metronome in the hush. Each dawn he listened, first for rigging creak, then for heartbeats thumping through planks, then for Heartfire's tempered pulse pressed against his thigh. It beat in a slow 3-count now. 2 soft sparks, then a firmer thrum, as if echoing the cadence of rowers. Pull, pull, rest. 10 days out from King's Landing, the wind slackened and shifted west, bringing scents of lemon and marsh reed. The horizon showed a darker smudge, the Shield Islands and the wide mouth of the Mander, Green Reach country at last. Marguerite found John aft by the helm where he conferred with Yara and Gendry over the map table. She set a clay cup of herb broth beside him. Steam rose, curling around a sheet of parchment weighted by a block of lead. "We'll need to redistribute hull repairs," she said without preamble. Sigh lost a plank near her waterline when that last squall spun free. "My carpenters packed the gap with barrel staves, but she'll need dry dock in Highgarden before attempting the Sunset Sea." Gendry pinned the map and traced a finger along the Shield coast. "We can anchor at Greenshield. The Tyrol port's deep enough. I'll send our joiners across decks in shifts." He gave Marguerite a careful smile. Respect shading to admiration. "Your herb patches kept 5 carpenters from losing fingers to infection. Best salve I've seen." "Now," she acknowledged with a modest lift of brow, the morning light catching new sun freckles across her nose. "The salve was Samuel's recipe," she corrected. "I only chose herbs hardy enough to survive brine." A pause, then a wry tilt. "But I'll accept your praise on behalf of the Reach. Flowers adapt." Yara leaned elbows on the rail. "You two talk of wood and petals. I talk of purses." She slapped a ledger cut from sailcloth, ink smudged by salt. "Valyrian charts, fetched triple weight, in silver. Our holds brim with shards of obsidian glass, netted fish species the archmaesters claimed were myth, pebbles that glow faint at dusk. If we sell clever, one voyage covers a decade of wars, but only if we dock somewhere traders trust." "And now?" John turned the ledger, scanning columns. "Harpoon tooth sawfish, mirror pearls, dawn steel trinkets. Profit comes after people," he said. "First we offload wounded at Greenshield, then King's Landing for counsel." Yara's mouth quirked. "We risked tentacle horrors and the Mother of Ashes so lords could bicker in a marble hall. Remind me to bring a pillow." "And so?" Before John answered, the lookout whistled twice. Signal for sails on the horizon. 3 specks emerged southeast. Sleek galleys tacking in elegant arcs. Banners a rich dusk, purple-fringed silver. Tyrion, summoned by Bell, squinted through a spyglass. "Triarch colors," he muttered. Volantis. The Free City's fleet seldom ventured this far west, unless coin glittered ahead. Tyrion tapped the spyglass against his palm. "They'll want our charts, perhaps even our shards. Volantis prides itself on owning old Valyrian relics." Yara rapped her knuckles on Dawn's steel. "Let them try wrestling these from Greyjoy decks." She met Joan's gaze. "What's our posture?" John studied the galley's angle of approach. Non-aggressive, sails reefed to drift. "Curious, not hostile," he concluded. "But we set terms. Stormbreakers outrange their catapults. We'll hail them under truce, full arms ready." The signal drums rang across timbers. Sailors bustled to position. Stormshroud banked through a tight gyre overhead, as though tasting distant oiled wood. Her roar rolled across water, enough to make volantine oars falter mid-stroke. When the lead galley drew within hailing distance, a herald clad in scaled copper armor shouted, "Peace from the Triarchs! We come bearing courtesy in letters sealed by orange wax." Couriers unhooked a brass cylinder from a yardarm and floated it across on an inflated wine bladder. Gendry fished it aboard. Tyrion broke the seal. The letter, penned in lofty High Valyrian, congratulated the Westerosi Crusaders on soothing the restless mountain, and requested a delegation of wise artisans to negotiate for peaceful exchange of discoveries, that both continents prosper. Royale polished diplomacy for let's bargain before swords unsheath. Tyrion translated aloud. Robin Arryn, perched on railing, asked, "Does prosper mean they expect ownership? Or tribute?" Tyrion mused. "Volantis plays emperor every century or so. Best we remind them those days past." "Then shall." John drafted a reply in blunt Valyrian. "The seas remain free. Charts may be shared in good faith after Westeros cleans wounds. Relics not for sale. Ambassadors welcome in King's Landing under peace banners." He handed the rolled parchment to Yara. "Ballasted with a rusty nail," he said. "Symbolic weight." She smirked and returned the message via bladder. The volantines waved uncertainly, then eased sails east, choosing caution over curiosity. Marguerite exhaled slow. "First test of our lullaby's legacy," she said. "Let's hope future tests stay on parchment." Green Shield appeared patchworked in emerald fields and sandy coves. The fleet anchored in a lagoon spangled with sea lavender. Wounded were rowed ashore, hammocked under oak limbs heavy with catkin tassels. Marguerite oversaw triage, herb lore kit spread across a driftwood table. Stormshroud found a broad cliff and dozed, wings draped like midnight curtains. Jon, Tyrion, and Sansa convened under a canvas pavilion pitched near the root of an ancient oak, whose trunk bulged with amber lumps of hardened sap. Above, doves cooed in lazy corrals. Below, a rough wooden table held a map of Westeros marked with wax chips. Black for strongholds intact, red for regions still nursing war scars, blue for river levees needing repair. "We'll split once we reach King's Landing," Sansa said, tapping the north chip. "Bran requires me at Winterfell. Harvest planning falls behind after the late blight on barley." Gendry, elbows on knees, leaned forward. "Storm's End will send carpenters north. Baratheon oaks stand tall this year. We can spare beams." Jon nodded gratitude. His gaze drifted to Heartfire laid across the map, orange glint reflecting tree shade. "A sword can't plow," he murmured, "but its story can feed hope." He slid the blade aside, exposing the Riverlands chip. "Edmure's levy crews need tar pitch. If Tyrell couplers supply, flood stay managed." Tyrion steepled fingers. "And the Lannisters?" he asked, feigning casual. Gone was the lion banner, but the gold veins of the Westerlands still mattered. "Sebastin Lannister holds Casterly Rock now. Young, eager to prove worth. He'll lend coin for roads if we ensure the small council recognizes his title." "Then Jon's expression tightened, recalling the Lannister name carved across old griefs. But he flicked the Casterly chip half-circle, indicating assent. "We judge lords by deeds, not blood." Tyrion's eyes softened a moment, thanks unspoken. Then he sipped watered wine and pivoted. "Which leaves the Iron Islands." Yara crossed arms. "We rebuild Pike's quays, integrate trade lanes, marry salt and green, and call it even. Yet some of my uncle's loyalists murmur stirs of the old way. They crave reaving. Bendiwand. That creed dies slow," Jon said. "Offer them oars to row grain instead of swords to steal. Partners earn more silver than pirates." Yara's grin flashed hungry. "I'll anchor markets at Lonely Light first. Fewer old priests chanting drown the world there. Let prophets preach." The meeting concluded when Brienne arrived, fresh from deck repairs. She reported hull breaches sealed and projected one more day to reprovision water. Her calm competence steadied the war-numbed crew better than any speech. Jon lingered as others filed away. "Can you keep eyes on Tyrion?" he asked quietly. "Volantis may seek private deals through him." Brienne's jaw set. "He's not as reckless as rumor paints," she answered, but she inclined her head. "Still, I'll watch." They parted. Jon walked to the cliff where Stormshroud slept, each footstep rustling time. He sat and gingerly traced the battered wing's leading edge. Scars knitted, scales regrowing pale opal over char streaks. "We fly again soon," he whispered. The dragon's eye cracked open, pupil of vertical night sky slit, reflecting Jon's face. A lazy rumble vibrated the ground, content. 3 days later, the fleet made Blackwater Bay, greeted by gulls and the salt-sweet tang of estuary reeds. King's Landing's walls glowed sun-baked ochre, the red keep gleaming where new marble faced old soot streaks from wildfire decades past. Bells rang, announcing returning heroes. Small folk thronged quays, waving scraps of fabric dyed in patchwork colors. It felt surreal to Sansa, this jubilation after such dire tasks. She disembarked first, accepting armfuls of early lilacs from street children. Tyrion and Marguerite followed, exchanging wry looks as gold cloaks kept the jostling crowd at bay. Jon descended last, ghost flanking, Heartfire sheathed under travel-stained cloak. Lord Davos Seaworth waited at dock's end, one hand resting on pommel of a plain steel cutlass, and one eye wet. "Thought the sea swallowed you all," he rasped. Sunlight silvered new streaks in his beard. He clasped Joan's arm, then Sansa's, then even Tyrion's, lingering longest there. "7, bless me, you look shorter," he teased the dwarf, voice cracking with relief. Tyrion bowed. "Blame a ship's deck pitched above waves. Land steel's height." They wended to the Red Keep's courtyards, where tent pavilions had risen. Tyrell silks shading pallets of grain, Lannister wagons disgorging iron ingots smelted in dawn steel molds, Dornish merchants hawking citrus. The courtyard felt like a fairground more than a seat of power. At mid-morning, they convened small council, plus the visiting lords. The throne room shimmered with colored banners. Jon noted the Stark direwolf and Targaryen, three-headed dragon now entwined on one drape hung behind the Iron Throne. Aenys' symbol reborn, though the prince himself was long ashes. The Iron Throne remained unoccupied. Davos insisted sessions be conducted from semicircle chairs on floor level since the forging of Heartfire. None argued. Reports unfurled. Harvest projections, shipping lanes reopened, the Iron Bank dispatching auditors to evaluate treasury solvency. Corran presented a scroll proving Dawnsteel's tensile resilience. He proposed building watchtowers along the wall with Dawnsteel keystone braces to prevent fissure collapse during spring thaw surges. Tyrion summarized Volantis's overture. Many nodded warily, others hungrily. Jon proposed a symposium, neutral ground in Gulltown, to share new seafaring hazards and coordinate watch beacons. Yara tossed a dagger that embedded Point First in the map. "Fine," she said. "But no city controls those charts alone. We place copies in the Citadel and in Pike's library. Let fishermen decide routes themselves. Now." The council adjourned by setting a date. 1 month hence, in Gulltown's new wharf hall. Night settled warm. Torches ringed the city's river promenade where pavilions housed feasts. Musicians plucked lutes. Someone flew paper lantern kites shaped like dragons, not mocking, but celebratory. Jon, still in dusty clothes, slipped away from revelry to the godswood that had survived wildfire and war, though half the weirwood's face bore scorch marks. He knelt, ghost curling at his side, and pressed palm to the carved chevron cheeks. Sap whispered of cool roots. A voice behind him spoke low. "I wondered if you'd visit before you left." He turned to find Arya Stark half-shrouded in shadows, hair grown to her shoulders, eyes gleaming with the half-wild freedom of far roads. She wore supple leathers, needle and dagger both belted. She smiled and looked older, bone structure defined by years of wind and grit, yet still unmistakably the little sister who once begged him for sword lessons. Jon rose, heart lifting. They embraced, ghost nosing her knee in greeting. Arya laughed softly. "You smell like burnt salt. Valyria's best perfume." He drank the sight of her. "When did you return?" "Today. Rode through Queensgate last week. Heard rumors of dragons sealing volcanoes. Thought I might catch the tail of the tale." She cocked her head. "You look different." He touched his chest absently, the new heart's subtle hum. "Long story." "I like long stories," she said. "Tell me on the road. I sail again soon. Bravos calls. But I could stay till Gulltown." They walked under willow canopies, recounting pieces of adventures. Arya's run-ins with pirate princes in the Stepstones, Jon's duel of ice and dawnfire. When he described the Mirror Woman, Arya's brow furrowed. "A stranger older than any faceless man. I'd like to study her reflection." She brushed bark with fingertips. "Perhaps the many-faced god sleeps in molten places too." Jon studied her earnest curiosity. "Just come home sometimes," he said. "Mother would want us to rest." Arya's smile softened. "Home is where feet pause, big brother. I'll pause in Winterfell soon. But then I keep moving." "Nanny." He squeezed her shoulder. For once, he embraced the thought rather than dread it. Across the Bay of Crabs, in the ruined stronghold of Driftmark, a hooded figure stood among charred pillars. Mildew and gull droppings crusted marble. A rent in the roof framed stars. The hooded one, Once Maester Marwyn, called the Mage, pressed a silver rod tipped with black iron into a fissure in the floor. The rod pulsed, runes flared violet. A second figure, gaunt as ash, stepped from behind a collapsed arch. Keyburn, ex-maester, ex-hand, rumor consumed. His eyes shone fever-bright. "It stirs," he whispered. "The current shifts. Something new fills the void night's ice left." Marwyn nodded. "Where one well plugs, another springs. Magic seeks equilibrium." He tapped the fissure. The sea quieted, yet deeper rivers swirl. If the Westerosi think their song ended the symphony, they misjudge the score. Qyburn produced a glass vial containing a curl of silver smoke. "Soul residue from a mirror wraith," he murmured. "Collected by couriers near Valyria." Marwyn's lips curled. "Then the real work begins." They retreated into shadow, fissure pulsing like a heartbeat. Mid-moon lit King's Landing's upper terraces, when Tyrion slipped into the small observatory once used by lunatic Maegel Targaryen for sky readings. Brienne followed, silent sentinel. Tyrion uncorked a wineskin and poured 2 measures into tin cups. He offered one. She hesitated, then accepted. "You may assignment watch," he teased, "but no oath of dryness prevents a sip." Brienne narrowed eyes good naturally. "Sir Podrick says Lannister wine corrupts quicker." "Pod exaggerates. Though I did water this slightly." He swirled drink. "Scarlet for the reach to match your cheeks." They stood by a slit window overlooking the city. Lanterns along river walkways traced curves like glowing serpents. Distant pavilions thrummed with revel songs. Stormshroud slumbered on the hill beyond city walls. Silhouette against smudged stars. Tyrion spoke quietly. "You think Jon's dream manageable? 10 houses working in concert? A dragon guarding peace, dawn steel splints in every broken place?" Wine glinted red at his lip. "Dreams require shepherds with sharp staffs." Brienne answered without turning. "Dreams need fewer sharp staffs if children are taught early not to stab." She sipped. "We build schools first, towers second." Tyrion chuckled. "Lady of Tarth with the scholar's plan. Should I knight you again as Sir Idealist?" She tipped her cup. "Just do your part, my lord of predictions." A faint smile met his. They toasted, their 2 tin cups clinking softly. Weeks passed in whirlwind. Raven messages ping-ponged across 7 kingdoms. Lords pledged timber, grain, masons, coin. On the wall, Corrin's dawn steel braces glinted as crews installed them. Melisandre and the Red Priests kindled braziers within each tower, weaving protective prayers through orange flame. At Winterfell, Bran Stark returned in a wicker howdah slung beneath Stormshroud's belly. Sansa greeted him in Godswood. Bran's eyes shimmered white, then hazel. He spoke. "Lines weave steadier now. Thank you." He placed a palm to tree bark. New leaves rustled, though still early spring. Ravens cawed message across branches. Bran turned to Sansa. "South grows restive. Old powers stir in Stormland's marsh. We must send seeds of watchfulness." Then, he plucked a slender branch budding red tip and handed it to her. "Plant this at King's Landing's new heart tree." His voice deepened. "And keep the sword close to the cradle." Sansa shivered. She tasked swift riders. Jon reunited with Ghost on Winterfell's parapet the next fortnight, snowflakes returning in light flurries, a final joke of winter. He walked battlements each dawn, giving orders for seed distribution, lumber quotas, and craft apprenticeships. At night he joined Sansa and Arya in the hall, feasting on mutton stew, hearing minstrels rehearse songs of the Mirror Maiden. The hall's hearth glowed stronger when Heartfire leaned nearby. Babies slept easier in cradle alcoves, mothers swore. Yet rumblings arrived by Raven. Clusters of illness along the Mander. Rash of silver blisters shaped like 8-pointed stars. Dockhands in Old Town coughing black ash. A trader in salt pans babbling of walking glyphs in tide pools at low tide. The Citadel filed each under post-Valyrian flux. Corin meanwhile charted lie lines and muttered about resonance backwash. John read reports beneath weirwood branches. His new heart beat faster, not in fear, but in recognition. The lullaby had soothed one giant, but smaller storms found cracks. Magic leaked like water through sand. Gulltown awaited, the promised symposium. Royal processions sailed from every coast. Yara captained a trimmed longship. Margaery arrived with caravans of healers. Tyrion led a Lannister trade envoy. Edmure traveled river barge route. Robin soared hawk-wing banners on mountain ponies. Sansa rode south with Jon, Arya ranging ahead unseen. Gulltown's new wharf hall rose atop pilings of dawnsteel splints. Its roof a sweep of shingles, painted cobalt, to mimic sea. Delegations filled benches arranged in semicircle. At the center, a dais held heartfire planted upright in an iron stand. Jon opened proceedings. He spoke of currents, cooperation, the vigilance needed when the veil between quiet and chaos thinned. He asked each lord to pledge not armies but scholars, stonemasons, singers. 1,000 lullabies stronger than any blade, he said. His voice carried the low, thrumming echo all recognized from battlefields past. Margaery presented data on new crop hybrids, barley grafted with a Valyrian moss strain resisting frost. Edmure outlined levee expansions. Robin offered aerial courier routes using trained eagles. Yara announced a charter for free ports, with tariffs invested in lighthouse beacons. Tyrion unveiled a printing press head commissioned from Myrish artisans, able to crank pamphlets nightly. Knowledge sent Adaros, not locked in towers. Applause rolled. Hope tasted fresh, until the hall doors slammed. 2 cloaked figures stalked aisle. At first, guards barred path. But the shorter revealed a sealed scroll bearing sigil of Archmaester Marwyn Dot. The taller lifted hood. Qyburn, gaunt and electric. Gasps. Dot. Brienne's hand shot to pommel. Arya, hidden near rafters, eased needle half-inch from scabbard. Qyburn bowed theatrically. Most gracious assembly, he rasped. Forgive intrusion. We bring tidings critical for this new age. Nando. Jon gestured warily. Speak. Marwyn unrolled parchment. Runes flared violet then settled. When you quieted Valyria, he said, you altered the consonants of sorcery. Echoes now converge on Westeros, nexus of equalized forces. We detected patterns, starblight along the Mander, ink cough in Old Town, manifestations of new harmonics. Left unmanaged, they will seed calamities surpassing long night. Sansa stepped forward. We have healers. Healers treat symptoms, Marwyn interrupted. Voice gravel. We speak of the seed. Tyrion scoffed. And you possess the cure? Qyburn's grin revealed brown teeth. A vessel to draw excess resonance, store it, and bleed safely. A reliquary, forged of mirror ore and dawnsteel, tempered in dragonfire. His gaze slid to the dais, and seated by the sword that birthed this age. A chill crawled spines. Heartfire gleamed hushed. Jon asked, you'd imprison magic in a cage? Reservoir, corrected Marwyn. Like a lightning rod ground storm. Better a vessel we control than wild surges. Murmurs rose. Curiosity. Fear. Avarice. Tyrion's brow furrowed, calculating. Gendry looked dubious but thoughtful. Bran's raven, perched in skylight. Screeched warning. Jon heard Heartfire hum louder. Not alarm, but challenge. He placed a palm to its flat. Warmth coursed up arm, into new heart, across spine. He faced assembly. We forged unity from shards, he said. The answer is not another cage. It is more voices, more watchtowers, more lullabies. Magic is river and sky and breath. Imprison it, and you birth darker prisons. Gasps subsided to hush. Marwyn's eyes hardened. Then you choose chaos. No, Jon replied softly. We choose. Dowered ship. Qyburn's hand slid toward a sleeve. glint of flask. Arya dropped from beam to dais in blink, blade tip at his throat. Brienne's sword unsheathed. Yara's dagger pinned Qyburn's cloak to floor. Margaery's herbal satchel sailed, cracking glass. Silver vapor hissed harmless into air. Guards seized them. Qyburn spat curses. Marwyn, oddly calm, whispered, "Balance will seek vessel elsewhere." They were led away. That night storms battered Gulltown, but dawn arrived clear. Heartfire stood on promontory above harbor, sun igniting orange ripples. Jon, Sansa, Arya, Tyrion, Margaery, Yara, Robin, Edmure, Gendry, Brienne, Corran formed a loose semicircle. Bran's raven perched upon the sword's pommel. Jon spoke. "Chaos seeks cracks. We patch one, another forms. We cannot stifle tides, only guide them." They pledged to expand watchtowers, to found a college of voices at Old Town where magic, lore, healing smithcraft studied together. They tasked Corran and Samwell to serve as first archons. Margaery offered Reach Gardens for herb research. Tyrion donated printing press rights. Robin promised mountain eyries for beacon scribes. Each vow sealed the lullaby's next verse. Stormshroud glided overhead, scattering gulls. Sunlight turned her scales auric. The dragon circled thrice, then wheeled west, as if beckoning. Jon felt pull, not command, but invitation. He looked to companions. One flight. He vaulted onto Dragonridge with practiced grace. Arya leapt behind before protest. Stormshroud surged skyward, wings buffeting. Below, friends shaded eyes as the silhouette dwindled. They soared along cliffs, wind roaring. Arya shouted joyous curses. Jon pointed toward horizon where the sea opened, glinting coins of noon light. There, a solitary spire jutted. A lighthouse half-ruined, once guiding ships into Braavosi routes. Stormshroud descended. The pair dismounted on mossy parapet. Carved into stone were inscriptions near eroded. "Here men watch so seas do not devour." Arya traced letters. Seems even lighthouses need watchers. They scanned waves. Far off, schools of silver fish leapt, life returning to waters once cursed. Jon breathed brine, heart steady in triple pulse. Beside him Arya grinned, hair whipping. "Race back?" she challenged. Jon laughed, genuine and bright. They mounted. Stormshroud hurled skyward, leaving the spire tiny against immensity. Below on shorelines, children would later claim they saw two riders cast silhouettes like twin wings, and that the dragons passing wrote music on air. That music, low, resonant, full of hammer, herb, tide, and hearth, became the age's soundtrack. It echoed in Dawnsteel towers, in market songs of free ports, in lullabies mothers hummed to babes who would grow not remembering the long night, but the long dawn that followed. Yet far beneath Driftmark's fissure, silver runes pulsed. In a cramped stone chamber, Marwyn etched notes by witchlight. He studied resonant spectrums, measuring rises each time Heartfire hummed across leagues. "Stewardship," he murmured, mouth twisting. "Let us see." He lifted a sliver of mirror ore to his eye. Reflected there shimmered not his own face, but countless possibilities. Stars falling into oceans, dragons sprouting twin heads, a sword fracturing into infinite threads. He smiled. Stories, after all, do not end. They ripple. Oh, hey. N.D.E. The moon shed a bruised light over Old Town's towering high tower, turning its dawn steel reinforcements the color of old pearls. Archmaester Samwell Tarly tightened his cloak against the sea wind as he climbed the final spiral toward the lantern room. Every few steps he paused to rest a hand on the new braces Gendry's smiths had installed. Ribbons of Valyrian touched metal that thrummed faintly, proof the tower itself could now sing resonance away from its foundations. Somewhere deep in the structure, tuning chimes sounded. A low gong followed by a chiming treble, one of Corran's safety words striking in answer to distant surges. Sam reached the glass-domed summit, and found Corin hunched over a telescope fashioned from ground crystal and bronze ribs. The old maester's beard had grown so wild it hid half his chain. Ink flecked his knuckles. The parchment at his feet was crowded with star charts annotated in red. "You felt it too," Sam said. Corin did not look up. "Third spike in as many nights. Stronger pattern each time." He tapped the telescope, adjusting its angle toward the southwestern sky. "We lost the last 3 hours of records when fog closed in. But just before the mist, I swear I saw a halo around the ghost star." He straightened, eyes glittering. "No comets scheduled this season, Sam." "Something's moving." Sam exhaled slowly. "Not another fracture." "Surely? Not ice, not fire," Corin muttered. "Oh, cord between." He stooped, rolled a fresh sheet on the scriptorium table. Bran's new seedlings at King's Landing sprouted petrichor blossoms last week. Petals that release scent only during storms of magic. We measure the oscillation, but the amplitude keeps rising. Menawa. Sam pictured Bran in Winterfell's Godswood, white eyes flickering. Bran had written yesterday, "The loom hums faster. Threads cross out of season." A warning in the three-eyed stag's gnomic style. Behind Sam, the chiming treble struck again. Higher, urgent. He and Corin exchanged a glance. "Another flare?" Sam asked. "Or someone testing chords," Corin said. "We'd best wake the council." Far north, dawn scattered pale gold across Frostfang foothills, where Jon Snow judged a spear practice between free folk outriders and Nullwood Watch recruits. Heartfire rested on a stump behind him, but even sheathed the sword's ember glow warmed the chilly spring air. Jon corrected a young spearman's footwork, then stepped back as Ghost bounded into the clearing, hackles up. A rider galloped behind the direwolf, brown hair flying. Raven on shoulder, Mira Reed, Bran's foremost courier. She swung from the saddle still breathless, thrusting a greased tube. "Urgent," from Sam and Corin. Jon broke the seal. Corin's cramped hand took 3 lines to explain, resonance spikes spreading. Starblight clusters near Old Town now mimic mirror ore patterns. Driftmark fissure active. Council demanded at Old Town 7 days from full moon. Jon's stomach tightened. They had believed the lullaby would buy at least a generation before ripples returned in force. Half a year, that was all. He dismissed drills, strode to a field tent where Sansa and Arya were poring over supply ledgers. Sansa read the note, lips compressing. 7 days from the full moon leaves, 5 to ride and 2 to sail. Arya set down a ledger. "I can make Old Town in 3. Jon shook his head. "Bran needs you here. Your roots watch the marsh for silver blossom sickness." He looked at Sansa. "You keep the north steady. I'll take the old road to Gulltown, then fast Brigantine south." Sansa folded the parchment. "Take Robin's eagle riders. If winds hold, messages can outpace the surge." She hesitated, then drew a slim dagger from her boot, the largest shard salvaged from frostbite, worked into a fresh blade by Gendry. "She doesn't sing often," she said, "but she still remembers Moonsilver. If resonant storms thicken, you may need her whisper." Jon accepted it, tucking the shard blade at his belt beside Heartfire. Ghost huffed a low growl. The direwolf hated sailing. Jon ruffled the white ears. "Stay. Guard Bran's roots." Ghost whined, but sat. Arya smirked. "I'll keep him busy. Besides, if another mirror maiden shows, someone must poke her eye." Jon clasped her forearm. "Hope it doesn't come to that." Arya's grin was dagger bright. "Hope is one thing. Knives are another." Nenderwen. 2 days later, Jon rode into Gulltown's harbor at dawn, cloak snapping. Robin Arryn's brigantine Bluing awaited, crew already casting off. Robin himself stood on gangplank, owl feather cloak whipping. "I'd wager you come for bad tidings," he called. "Spikes," Jon answered, leaping aboard. "Corin calls council." Robin nodded grimly. "Then we fly canvas until it tears." He shouted orders. Sails bloomed. A northeasterly gust whooped into rigging, stronger than forecast. As Bluing heeled, John felt Heartfire hum. Not pleasant warmth, but a sharp harmonic, as if plucked off key. Stormshroud shadowed them by mid-morning, called down by banner flares. She kept distance, uneasy, over the accelerating resonance. Her cry sounded shriller, echoing across sea like glass skittering atop ice. 3 nights into the voyage, weather turned queer. Stars swam behind gauzy veils. The ghost star throbbed red then blue. Crewmen muttered old prayers, and one swore he saw fish leap, trailing tendrils that glowed pale as frost. John ordered extra lamps run out on booms, light to dissuade curiosities of the deep. At dawn of the 5th day, Old Town's high tower emerged from fog. Around its base, flickers of silver-blue light chased along the dawn steel struts. Resonance discharges funneled into the sea. Waves fizzed where they struck, boiling tiny whirlpools that spat glitter. Joan's jaw tightened. The tower hummed like Heartfire's angry cousin. He disembarked onto the beacon quay where Sam waited, flanked by novice monks lugging scroll crates. Sam wasted no greetings. "Storms cluster above the Honeywine estuary," he said, voice hoarse. "Corin believes the fisher at Driftmark opened a relay. He fears someone on the inside is helping it stay open." John remembered Marwyn and Clyburn's smirk at Gulltown. "Reliquary." Sam nodded. "If they craft such a vessel, they'll drain resonance. But they'll also wield it. A dagger to hold the world hostage." They marched up Hightower's winding bridge. In the lantern chamber, Corin traced chalk arcs around a rotating armillary of dawn steel rings. The metal sang, low, unsteady. Gendry leaned over a forge brazier shaping new coupling studs. Tyrion sat on ladder rung sketching calculations. Margaery stood by a window, jotting symptoms from Southreach villages. When John entered, Corin hit a triangular chime, thin note rising. "The man who knows the lullaby's refrain," he barked. "Good. We must retune the tower." He gestured to the lowest ring. Cracks spidered through weld lines, vibrating. "Every discharge we redirect away from the city overloads the next brace. We need a fresh ground line." Gendry wiped sweat. "Another ring bigger. We melt the broken swords." "Then see." Tyrion shook his head. "We used almost every shard bracing watchtowers." John unbuckled Frostbite's shard dagger. "Add her voice," he said. "Bind it to the tower core." He drew Heartfire, pressed flat to cracked weld. Orange halo bled across fissures. Metal glowed, sealed. But the blade's hum intensified, as though swallowing too much dissonance. Joan's hand trembled before he pulled away. "We buy time," Corin said, illuminating a star chart. "But Driftmark vent leaks faster. We must close it." "Marwyn guards it," Tyrion murmured. "And rumor says he conscripted Carthene lensmiths, Volantine mirror tunnelers. Easy passage purchased with promises of power once reservoir complete." "Then we strike before completion," John said. Gendry hefted hammer. "We'll need a siege barge." "No," Arya said from the stairwell. No one had heard her arrive. She stepped into lamplight, cat soft. "Stormshroud and I scouted last night." She unrolled cloth. Sketches of Driftmark. Old Seagate collapsed inward, fissure glowing. Mirror ore pillars reflect any focused flame back on source. Cannon or dragonfire would fry attacker. She tapped sketch of side tunnels. "But my Braavosi friend once told me every fortress forgets its drain. There's a spent lava tube connecting to sea caves north side." "Small. If you're slim," Tyrion raised a brow. "Some of us were blessed with irreversible dimensions." Arya smirked. "Some just drink too much Arbor Red." John studied map. "A knife, not an army. We slip through, plant dawn steel keystones, flood fissure with tidal water. But we need the keystones singing the lullaby." He turned to Corin. Corin rummaged in crates, produced 6 fist-sized stubs forged from mix of shard dust and dawn steel shavings. "Attune them with Heartfire and Frostbite remnants. Plant at nodes, resonance cancels." Marguerite stepped forward. You'll need healers ready, mirror or vapor poisons. She handed a pouch of dried purple sage and pale moss. Chew, if lungs burn. John laid a hand on Stormshroud's flank that night, feeling the dragon's unease. She voiced a thin keening when Heartfire touched scales. Resonance fed back through living flame. He whispered, apologies. Stroked scarred wing. Only a glide, then you stay clear, he promised. Arya prepared grapples, daggers, a glass vial of faceless house tear powder. Tyrion insisted on coming, to ensure the lullaby versus scan, not because I relish filth tunnels. Robin sent 2 mountain tunnelers adept at squeezeways. Corran remained to hold the tower. Gendry pounded keystones into engineered cradles. Before dawn, a black-sailed sloop slipped from Old Town with Stormshroud gliding high overhead. Mist cloaked the sea. On deck, Jon pressed Frostbite's shard to each keystone. Arya whispered the lullaby's melody. Tyrion keeping pitch with a cheap tin whistle. Music for mice, he called it. The stub cores warmed, rings of light rippling. By noon, Driftmark's jagged teeth silhouette rose, fissure glow pulsing like a heartbeat. Stormshroud banked north, arrowing upward to distract watchers. On the sloop, crew folded sails, rowing silent into a kelp-choked cove. Arya led the crawl. Underwater arch, then narrow lava flue. Salt sloshed waist-deep, air reeked copper and wet stone. At choke point, the tunnel tightened to belly space. Robin's tunnelers wriggled first, dragging packs. Arya followed, then Jon, blade sheathed. Tyrion came last, muttering unsavory prayers. The tube spat them into a dim cavern lit by violet glow. Mirror ore veins climbed walls. Ahead, a platform of obsidian spanned chasm above the primary fissure. The reliquary forge. A half-sphere egg of mirror glass hung in chain cradle, swirling with ghosts of light. Marwyn and Qyburn stood at runic dais, robes crackling with static. Carthene workers fixed silver umbilicals into the egg. Arya signaled silence. Jon scanned. Six natural pillars ringed fissure. Perfect nodes. They crept, using stalagmites. One tunneler slipped. Pebble clattered. Marwyn's head snapped. Who treads cords uninvited? His voice boomed, amplified by ore. Jon strode out. Heartfire drawn, reflections leaping red in violet cave. Shepherds, he said. Arya melted left, Tyrion right. Marwyn spread arms. You smell a broken lullaby. Behind him, the egg pulsed. Silver lightning spidering. Give your sword. We tune vessel, bleed storms harmless. Harmless to whom? Jon asked. To you, for price. To us, for power. Same coin. Marwyn's grin cut deep. Qyburn twisted a valve. Resonance surged. The egg glowed blinding. A beam lanced, struck Heartfire. Jon staggered. Blade vibrated violently. Arya flanked, throwing a dagger. Qyburn ducked, but Tyrion's slingstone took him in jaw. Flask shattered, releasing swirl of mirror smoke. Jon planted Heartfire tip into basalt floor, channeling beam downward. The keystones, tossed by Robin's tunnelers, slammed into pillar sockets, magnetized by resonance. One by one they lit orange. Ore veins shrieked, discordant. Marwyn howled, chanting countertones. Arya sprinted up chain catwalk toward egg cradle. 2 guards barred with crescent spears. She slid, hamstrung one, vaulted blade tip of the other. Rolling under chain, she slashed main cable. Cradle lurched. Marwyn screamed, beam wavered. Tyrion hammered release pin on second cable. Robin's tunneler severed third. The egg swung, hitting ore column. It cracked. Silver mist spewed in spirals. Jon pushed Heartfire harder. His chest burned, but shards of frostbite on the pillars answered, weaving lullaby counter-melody. The fissure flood roared. Seawater burst from lava tube cracks, hissing against molten floor. Steam billowed. Marwyn hurled a runestone. It struck pillar 3. Keystone popped out. Resonance surged unevenly. Cave shook, platform snapped. Arya clung to chain whip, legs dangling. Jon yanked frostbite dagger from belt. Threw. Blade lodged in pillar slot. Glowed. The harmony restored. Lava floor glazed crystalline. Qyburn shrieked as steam geyser enveloped him. He vanished. Marwyn stumbled back as egg ruptured, silver tendrils lashing. He tried to shape a sigil, but the tendrils pierced him, wrapping like vines, cocooning him inside mirrored shell. His final cry was wordless wonder. Egg collapsed inward, dragging cocoon through floor into abyss. A deep note rolled, then silence. The fissures glowed dimmed to dull red. Keystones cooled, pulses settling into soft amber. Arya scrambled from chain, hair singed. She eyed Jon, breathing ragged. That's 2 mirror monsters down. Jon retrieved Heartfire, its hum soft once more. Balance kept. He looked toward abyss. For now. Tyrion dusted ash off doublet. I propose we brick this cave and move to a less dramatic career, perhaps cheesemongering. Weeks later, at a meadow near River Run where the new College of Voices laid cornerstone, 12 lords and ladies gathered. Jon set Heartfire point down, blade glowing amber. Sam read Corrin's report. Energy flux tapered, starblight cases falling. Frostbite shards and pillars sang steady. Driftmark's vent cooled under 2 fathoms seawater. Sansa presented charter scroll for college, equal seats for maesters, wildling lore carriers, children of the forest, Summer Island song historians, Doran's water priests, Ironborn tide chanters. Each signed. Marguerite distributed saplings bred from Bran's red-tipped branch. Plant near hearth, she said. So roots drink stories. Gendry unveiled portable dawn steel braces. Smallholds could install in barns. Robin released a falcon wearing silver band inscribed with lullaby runes, symbol of Sky Beacon's network. When all vows spoken, Jon turned to companions. The meadow filled with clover hum and lark song. We stay watchful, he said. Magic is river and sky. We guide, not cage. Storm shrouds soared overhead, casting gold-rimmed shadow. Heartfire's flame flickered in response, gentle as candlelight. Across Westeros, new towers chimed soft harmonies each dusk. Children learned lullaby verses in village schools. Traders sailed sneerless of smoking seas now calmed. Silver blight receded to myth. Mirror or whispers stilled. Yet, deep trenches of world still cradled forgotten fires. Somewhere beyond the edge of maps, a shard of Mirror Woman drifted in black water, gathering echoes. And far above, the ghost star pulsed. Dim now, but not extinguished, reminding watchers that balance is no final state, only a breath between melodies. In Winterfell's Godswood, Bran opened his eyes, whispering to quiet snow. The next verse begins.